Nancy, did you get snow over there in Seattle?
Yes,
Wow.
we did.
Yeah, we had some snow here, slick roads this morning. So
Yep. It's mostly gone now, but it was a exciting morning flurry.
yep, I think our mountains are definitely getting snow. I see Chet is ready to go. So
Oh, I was just gonna say I see that participants are still joining us. So I was just gonna give it another minute. So Nancy, where are you located at?
I'm in Seattle.
Seattle, okay. Awesome. I got a notification this morning saying that Seattle was supposed to be getting some severe weather shortly.
I think it's come and gone, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, like Shannon was saying, we woke up to some snow. Very surprising.
Right. Probably already moved east. It's good for the snowpack.
Yes.
snow and slick roads, and yeah, definitely some more snow in the high country. So that's good for the fish.
Yep.
For sure.
All right, well, the time is now 12:02, so we'll go ahead and get started. Tatsala, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the first speaker series, Bible Voices Matter of 2023. Here today to bless our presentation is Andre Picard Jr.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to help out however I can, encouraging everybody to open your heart, open your minds to some of the ideas, some of the stories, some of the thoughts, that others have. And, all these things that we are going to discuss, and all these things that we're going to try and help out our natural resources, and all these type of things that we're trying to do as a people, not just as an Esper's travel member, but also as people in general. People all over the world, benefit from us being alive. Each and every one of us individually, being alive has a part to do in this world. And, really want to express to everybody that importance, of doing your part, that importance of having the ideas and having the thought, and then going out and doing the studying to help yourself, make your life make sense. And I really want to say to the people who are putting on these talks and everything, that it's a good job. It's a good job that you're doing. And also to some of these ones too, that they put out some videos, informational videos, and it's a real beautiful videos put together really well, and really pulls at the heartstrings, trying to understand that we have natural resources, that we have to take care of, we have to take care of them. And sometimes it feels like we're really, I don't know, helpless, I guess. Sometimes it feels, we kind of question, what are we doing? Why are we even doing this? It's not going to make a difference. But, we all put all of our thoughts together and all of our efforts together, and it makes a real big deal. It makes a real big deal for our future. And so these words, I want to make these like this blessing or this, you don't need permission from me. You don't need my permission, to have a blessing, or my permission to have to speak to our Creator, to speak to our God, because that God's inside you, and every one of you, have that power to open up your heart, open up your mind, and accept that, and so, I just want to say that through these words, and then through this, I'll share a song, and then through this song, you know, that there might be something there that's going to help you, might be something there that's going to uplift you, you know, and for all those things that we might be in need of and everything, you know, that we can find a way to go find them for ourselves and find a way to stand up and keep going. I know some of us, we have lost loved ones, you know, some of us have maybe suffered a divorce, maybe we suffered something terrible in our life, you know, but too, you know, and through that we can find the guidance, you know, to keep moving forward in a good way. So I'll go ahead and share a song, and then after this, I'll make this my portion here. So say Katsiaya, everyone. Thank you for having me come over. Oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, hey, hey, hey. Oh, oh, hey, hey, oh, 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 hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Hey, hey, oh, oh, hey. So that song there is a song that comes from our game that we play called Stick Game. And through this game, a stick game, it's also a good teacher. It's also good guidance. And so these songs, as they come through, you know, I want it to be that way. Something good and something to guide you in a good way. Katsiaya, kalo. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Andre, for that beautiful song and for starting us off here today. So welcome to our speaker series. This week we are focused on energy. I would like to introduce our Vice Chairman of the Nez Perce Tribe Executive Committee, Shannon Wheeler. Vice Chair Wheeler has served as Treasurer 2017 to 2018, Chairman 2018 to 2021, and he is currently serving as Vice Chairman of the Nez Perce Tribe. Mr. Wheeler is deeply rooted in the protection of natural resources and has advocated in many forms for the continued support and preservation of these life sources. So thank you, Mr. Wheeler, for joining us today.
Thank you, Rachel, or Chetta. I would like to get that name out there so everybody knows Chetta. And thank you, Andre, for the beautiful song and the words, and, you know, really opening this meeting in a good way that is beneficial to all of us. And I believe that, you know, when you open those doors and commit to those feelings that you have and those thoughts that, you know, you've learned throughout your lifetime, and you share it with others and you compare these notes, I think that's really what we're attempting here today, is to really look and understand the area of energy. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our other speaker at this time. She's the Executive Director for Northwest Energy Coalition, and she doesn't need no introduction, but I'll introduce her anyway. So Nancy, your floor.
Well, thank you so much, Vice Chairman Wheeler and Chetta and Andre, for the warm welcome and the introduction and opening for this conversation. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank the Salmon Orca Project for reaching out and engaging on the energy side. Certainly is a timely and important conversation. Before we started, we were talking a little bit about the weather and the snowpack and the fact that while these winter storms can be disruptive and hard to navigate, they're vitally important for keeping snow in the mountains, so that we can benefit from that snow for our rivers and our salmon. So it's an important time. And I'll just do a quick further introduction for folks that don't know. The Northwest Energy Coalition was founded in 1981 to kind of watchdog the implementation of the Northwest Power Act that expanded the responsibilities and obligations of the Bonneville Power Administration to bring salmon recovery to the forefront of their mission, and to address further clean energy development in the region, primarily energy efficiency and new renewable energy resources. Since that time, we have continued to work on the Bonneville Power Administration, as well as to support our allies working on salmon recovery with energy expertise, and focused in on policies, regulations, programs that further the development of new clean energy resources, affordability programs for communities with lower incomes, and making sure that we're supporting community resilience with distributed energy resources and energy efficiency. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for that, Nancy. Definitely appreciate, the work and how all this is interconnected, with the Salmon Orca project, and as we continue to have different talks, in many different forums that the tribe is involved in here. Of course, we're involved in the FMCS process, and that's through the litigation process. And, there seems to be some ground that is happening there. I know there's a lot of meetings going on, and hopefully that, they're as fruitful as everyone hopes that they will be. And I think, going back to the things that, if we're talking the Power Act, and just one thing I guess I wanted to mention was at the Clean Energy Summit that the Department of Energy put on in Washington, D.C., there was a board that this wall that they had, and they said, okay, when did your tribe become involved in energy? And ours started back in the 30s when the dams were built. So we were involved in seeing the repercussions of a hydro system. And so then, different times tribes had very little things to do with energy. And then, of course, 1990, we put the Northwest Power Planning Act as something that affected the Nez Perce and the Pacific Northwest tribes. Then you'd go another 10 years, another decade, and another decade. But when you got to 2020, that wall was amassed with all these different tribes that were doing work in the clean energy field, or some type of energy where they were tied to. In the beginning, very few tribes, and so as we progress, I think that's kind of the direction of tribes, and understanding that, not only can we help the world with the way that we do energy, but also the the opportunities that tribes have to be able to do things that are meaningful, not only from a standpoint of helping save the planet, but also in job development. And I think the tribes are seeing this opportunity, this golden opportunity for them to step up and to actually play a role in that, where we didn't have that role before because of this. We could see that on that wall. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on that, and kind of get into where we're going today with understanding like Nimipu Energy, the work that we're doing, why we're doing that work with Nimipu Energy, and being able to have some sight forward as we look at commercial development of commercial scale development, and then we start running into the issues with Bonneville Power and the grid, and how resilient is that grid, what's that infrastructure look like, what is the amount of energy that can be sent onto that grid, and so those are the questions that we have now. Is okay, if it's going to take 10 to 20 years to really develop that infrastructure, and development of the renewable energies can be done in 1 to 3 years to meet those needs for us, replacement energy for the lower Snake River dams, then what can we do differently, because it doesn't seem to be fitting within the timelines that the scientists are saying with the populations of fish and their trajectory right now. So that's a big question for us, and how can we do things differently. So I guess right there, Nancy, I know we had spoke before, and you had spoke about conservation too, so if you could maybe touch on that, would be great.
Yep. That's a great setup, Vice Chairman Wheeler, on the transition that we're in. The Northwest energy system is in a transformation. We are, as a region and throughout the West, really, we're decarbonizing our energy economy, transitioning our vehicles and our buildings, some to electricity. We're decarbonizing others, and we're closing our fossil fuel generation in order to reduce climate pollution. And at the same time, new technologies have come on the scene that make our system, if we think back, you mentioned the 1930s, our system has traditionally been a one-way system, right? Power went from the generator to your house or to your building or your business or your community. And it was just the power plant was on and you were the off-taker. Now, we have a very integrated, interactive, multi-directional system. That's where we're going, where individual customers, communities, they generate. So they're sending power back to the grid. We have a much more distributed set of generation resources with renewable resources and community-based resources. The technology we're using to store energy and to improve the efficiency of our buildings makes a big difference in the way the energy system operates. We sometimes call it a harmonious grid, where it's got multiple musicians playing at the same time, not just one, the way we used to have. So that creates opportunity for more parties to be engaged in the energy system, more entities like Nimipu Energy, that's the organization of the Nez Perce, to drive energy development within your community. So you're not taking power off the grid, you're generating yourself and putting it on the grid. And that, to me, is going to be an increasing transition in our energy system. And we will see more and more communities take control of their energy system for community resilience purposes, for affordability purposes, for environmental restoration purposes. So there are many workforce development comes from developing your own resources and empowering your community to manage those resources as well. That's not to say we still won't need large utility scale resources, because I think we will. I think we will need both, but it will become a more balanced and multi-directional system, perhaps more complicated for sure, but technology is also evolving to make operation of the system easier and to make the system more resilient. When I think about replacing the lower snake and the power system needs, I look to the amount of new renewable energy development that's happening in the region today. There are, and that at the moment is being led at the large scale by some of the investor-owned utilities that are needing to close their fossil fuel generation facilities. And they are putting out requests for new clean energy resources. And the amount of response they get to that request for new resources dwarfs what they need. So to me, that says that the market, the development process is ready to replace the dams, the energy services provided by those dams. And that will enable a transition to happen with those projects. And we are, as though that need in the power replacement portfolio to replace the lower snake dam needs to be fit into the context of the electricity transition more broadly, the decarbonizing of the energy system. And when we look at those two factors working together, the amount of new renewable generation, wind, solar, biomass, geothermal, battery storage, distributed generation, that is all under development now, and the costs are lower than we had expected. And you mentioned, Vice Chairman, the conservation. That's an issue near and dear to my heart, where I started in the energy business, working on energy conservation, energy efficiency. The saying goes, the lowest cost energy resource we have is the one we don't use, right? So the more we are efficient, the more we conserve, the less generation we need. And that has to be number one. We need to work and redouble our efforts to promote energy efficiency and conservation within the region. If we're going to transition some energy load to the electric system with our vehicles and our buildings, those vehicles and buildings have to be as efficient as they possibly can be, so that we are weatherizing and putting in energy efficient equipment in those buildings and managing that load, so that we're not making our peak energy times bigger than they need to be.
That's definitely something I think that, the tribes are catching on to, as well as, the opportunities that are out there for conservation. Not only the work that we can do within each of our own communities, and but also, what the federal government's doing. I've heard of a study being done about, as I'd mentioned previously, that the time frame for infrastructure for the grid infrastructure is between 10 and 20 years projected, but development could happen in 1 to 3. So a lot of the federal buildings, federal buildings that are out there could be equipped with solar and battery storage in 1 to 3 years. And if you're removing that energy from the grid and generating that with solar or wind and utilizing battery, the need for that energy then is being reduced through conservation. That we're taking energy and looking at it differently by capturing the energy when it's being produced, and I think that's a large portion of it there too, is that what can we replace with energy that just bypasses us every day. So if the hydro system says, well, if water's just flowing over the spillways, that's just bypassing them. Well, every day the sun is shining or the wind is blowing, that's energy that's bypassing us. So really, if we look at energy differently and how we utilize, when we utilize, and not depending upon the cost of what that is, then I think we could for the future do the energy thing right, where every day we're utilizing sunshine. Well, we should, when the sun is shining, we should be utilizing that energy at that time. And so nationally, how do we look at that? And so through conservation, I think that when it's being produced is when you should be using it. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, because it fits in with this question of what can be done to replace the power that's being generated by the dam. So I don't know if you wanted to touch a little bit more on that, because I know you just did, but is there anything else you'd like to say to that?
Yeah, I think that the role of federal leadership, we now have huge resources coming out of the federal government through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Acts. Both of those are providing significant opportunities for funding of energy efficiency, distributed generation, wind, solar, resource development, even grid management and grid modernization. And some of those funds will go into the states and the tribes as governments. Some of those funds will go to individuals who make investments in energy efficient equipment in their homes or want to weatherize their buildings and reduce their costs. So there's a huge opportunity to take advantage as a government and as businesses and community members of those federal resources that will help accelerate the transition that you talked about. The one other idea that I have that kind of fits into what you were talking about and what Nimipu Energy is doing is we would like to see the states and the federal agencies within the Northwest to reduce their use, one, through energy efficiency and conservation, and two, through requests to their local utilities or through their own investments, non-hydro renewable energy resources. So to make a call and help stimulate the development of new clean energy resources that help take pressure off of the hydro system and help stimulate the kind of economic development and workforce development that the region is looking for as it develops new clean energy technologies. So when you talk about leading by example, that's what Nimipu Energy is doing and what we'd like the states and the federal government to do in this region and help drive the development of those new resources.
Well, thank you for that. And I see that there's a couple of more questions up on here that how can tribes lead on these issues of energy replacement? And, many of the things that the Nimipu Energy is doing, stems from, basically looking at the climate and understanding that we'd like to get to net zero and reduce our carbon footprint. But it's led to these other things that we've discovered now that, we weren't, we're salmon people, we're fish managers, and understanding that there's this huge opportunity out there for us in the energy field and with the Infrastructure Reduction Act. And I think there's just our Inflation Reduction Act, excuse me, that the tribes have this great opportunity for siting and workforce development and being able to do, you know, the installations and monitoring, and, you know, I think financing too is a big opportunities for the tribes, and there's issues in siting, you know, a lot of things. I think meeting with tribes early and identifying that, you know, these traditional cultural properties that are out there that are very important to tribes could be a traditional area that we gather, and so those things and that are out there, I think are where tribes can play a big role in that. And I know the study that Governor Inslee was doing with Karen Janowitz was addressing some of those, the least conflict solar siting issues that are happening now, and we're still you know, considering, you know, those things that for us at Nez Perce, and we would like to see there's opportunities for deployment of solar commercial scale solar development in some areas that may have first foods on them, and so how can these coexist with one another is the options that we're looking at. So as tribes are involved early, I think the tribes can definitely lead on those issues, and they fall in with the environment. Environmental issues are tied close to that. There's also the, you know, agriculture interest and that are a part of that too, and part of that development. So the tribe does have agriculture fields too as well. How can we look and be you know, where's the ingenuity at here in order to be able to do one thing while not losing something else? And I think that's the balancing act that the tribes are looking at in renewable energies. So, you know, it's not just a double whammy for the tribes, but at the same time we have something that is in danger. You know, the lower Snake River stocks that are in danger from extinction. So we have to make difficult decisions and hard choices, and sometimes there's a means to an end to foresighting that, you know, how long can this be sustained until, you know, future transitions into energies that we don't have yet that may be able to change even in 10 or 20 years or 30 years, whatever that is out there that can you know, revolutionize the energy market or the energy development. And so as we continue to kind of push forward, you know, we look at Tribal Energy Regulatory Authority, bringing the tribes together to be able to have that type of authority to kind of help govern the tribes, because we know we can develop faster than we can regulate, and I think that's sometimes becomes an issue, right? You start putting the cart before the horse, and but you need that regulation in place because there's a lot of safety issues when it's coming around around power. So I think that's one of the things that we as tribes can definitely are doing. So as in the Nimipu Energy with the virtual power plant, developing MOUs with other tribes to be able to come together to form those co-ops to combine all of our energies together. And I don't think that's limited to just tribes. That could be other commercial developers of energy that partner with tribes too as well. And there's just the opportunities are out there, and we definitely need to take advantage of that, you know, in the face of climate change. So there's a couple other questions here. What are the power needs of the future? I know the estimated, I'll let Nancy take over, but I just want to lead into that with you know, Washington's projected power needs in 2050 are the growth of like 30%, I believe. And so how do we meet those needs? And I think that's an important question. So I'll turn that over to Nancy.
Well, I think we've touched on those that question to some extent, and you're absolutely right. We have we're looking at big growth, right? As we decarbonize our energy economy. And but the good news is that there are a pretty exciting portfolio of new technologies and existing technologies that are expanding in the market, whether that's wind. Offshore wind is a new resource that is expected to be developed in the West in the next decade. There was a question in the chat about storage and battery storage. The good news is that it's all not lithium-ion batteries that are being proposed. The innovation in the battery space is very exciting. Different kinds of batteries, whether they're iron air or flow batteries, they are on the cusp of market development. And in fact, a number of those new battery technologies are being deployed now in kind of demonstration projects across the country. So I think they're going to give lithium ion a run for its money and diversify the storage potential. And that's important because you want longer duration storage technologies to be available. And so when we talk about how do we meet those needs, that's a key piece of it. The other part that I touched on earlier is managing our usage. We, in our homes and our buildings and our vehicles, we have the great opportunity and ability to manage when we use our energy. And that makes a huge difference to the way the grid operates and allows us to use that managed load to integrate our wind and solar and complement when the wind is blowing and when the sun is shining. So that's something that we will see over the course of the next decade become a much more significant part of meeting our needs.
I'd like to add to that too as well. And as we look at the power needs for the future, here in the Pacific Northwest is one thing. We can generate enough power for the Pacific Northwest and meet that expected 30% growth. But there's also a need in the Southwest and California energy. Of course, California solar markets exploded, and Arizona, having its water issues, and in the Colorado, the Southwest is having a difficult time. So what do they look? They look to the Northwest and hydro for their supply of energy when they need it. And, firm energy, I guess, is, a term that the Bonneville Power Administration uses for being able to meet that reliability that people ask for, and knowing that their contracts are coming up with the public utility districts. There's a lot of interest in that firm power where there are questions with solar and wind and battery storage, and there's always going to be questions for that. But the size of the infrastructure of the grid, and what's being able to the physics that how much energy can actually be put on that grid is there's not enough space on the grid, and so those things, that build out needs to happen. But through conservation, can we meet those needs into the future? And I think those numbers, when they're crunched, will tell us a lot more. But when we're looking at shipping energy out of the Pacific Northwest, and the need for energy in California and in the Southwest, that puts a little bit more pressure on our systems here, the hydro system, or if they're pushing solar back up this way during those times too. So I guess the grid infrastructure is real key to this whole power needs into the future, and that's a big question of over the next 10 to 20 years, can we do that? And so for us, when we get those questions posed to us about can we breach the dams? Well, these are the things that come up with Bonneville Power Administration, that they have those things weighing on them as well.
Sure, and I don't disagree. That's a really good, important point. We need to first use our existing transmission system more efficiently, and deploy the fixes and the technologies that actually get more out of our existing system. And then looking at developing a broader Western market where we're sharing resources more effectively. Right now, we have a more traditional kind of bilateral market. And if we move to a market structure where it deploys and dispatches the resources that are most cost effective at that moment, the system will operate, I think, more efficiently, and we can share resources more effectively across the West. You know, the Southwest, as you mentioned, has great solar resource. Well, we more than they need, but getting that into we don't have really a market mechanism right now to bring as much of that into the Northwest as we could. So market development is going to be one of those issues that in the next 5 to 8 years, I think, is really going to change the way the Northwest Hydro System is operated, as well as how utilities use regional resources to meet their needs. And you're right, Vice Chairman Wheeler, we need to build more transmission, and we have to be smart about how we do it. We have to be strategic and thoughtful in siting and how those resources are deployed and developed.
And so that's really where, you know, the rubber meets the road for us in salmon recovery, is because we need that clock to start on replacement energy now, so that the dams can be you know, breached, and by breaching, you know, our numbers are showing that even through a higher spill, that you know, we can't exactly say these higher numbers are attributed to the higher spill, but we've seen greater numbers come back this past year in salmon coming into the Lower Snake, and the spill was 3 years ago when that started. But you know, we can technically say that it's what we predicted. It can't be scientifically tied to it, but we can say that we predicted that. So knowing that the salmon have X amount of time in their current trajectory, that, you know, as this next question poses, you know, the opportunities and venues in which tribal voices will be needed to influence dam removal and energy replacement. I think, you know, of course, the timing for the salmon is the urgent issue.
Yep.
Is first and foremost is their time that they have isn't in tune with you know, the infrastructure upgrades that need to take place. So, you know, the different voices, tribal voices, can be heard, whether it's in the Clean Energy Summit in Washington, D.C., our energy conference that we had, and then they have an upcoming conference June 12th through the 14th in AT&I is putting that on in Tulalip. And so there's opportunities there for the tribes to come together and start pushing the development. Because like we always say, the development's going to, you know, outpace the regulation. But once again, then you run up against the opportunity, or the opportunities that aren't there to place that energy onto the grid. So when does that clock actually start for replacing? Because that's kind of a moving goalpost for us that has been put out there, and we just want that goalpost to solidify so that we can actually start working on that. And so some of the other needs that are in the Southwest or in California, you know, the contracts that are coming up for the public utility districts, the Columbia River Treaty. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here that are associated to the hydro system, the Columbia River System of Operations, and of course then tied to salmon recovery. So, you know, as we continue to push from a policy perspective from the tribes, you know, that's what we're trying to nail down, is some of those things that can be set in place and without them moving, and what can we actually do now to have those larger impacts on a recovery as we look to rebuild an energy system that needs upgraded.
And adding to that, one thing that I'll mention is Washington State has a legislative proposal in the budget that would fund transportation replacement analysis, and it would fund energy replacement kind of next steps, development of a plan for the state of Washington and for replacement resources. Those are both being considered right now. There's also a move to have a replacement of irrigation resources be funded as well. So Washington State is under the leadership of Governor Inslee is really pushing forward on putting money behind kind of taking the next steps in the analysis front. So I think that's an opportunity. Folks want to weigh in with their Washington State representatives if they are in Washington State to promote those budget items. I think the other thing that I want to make sure is clear to the audience is the infrastructure and big system changes that we need to accommodate the growth in electricity are almost all post 2030, maybe even post 2035. We can do dam removal now within the next 5 to 8 years and replace the energy services we need with the existing portfolio of resources that we've talked about, whether it's on the customer side and the conservation and distributed resources, new generation of wind and solar. We can accommodate those on the existing infrastructure that we have. So I don't want that to be a barrier to moving ahead with Lower Snake Dam removal. We have those resources within the region, within the broader region, including Montana, to expand that capacity and move forward with replacement. We need to create the demand for that, which is the tribes, state government, federal government demanding the development of those new resources to serve their load and reduce the pressure on the hydro system. And then also at the same time, as we've talked about, we need to begin the process of those longer term infrastructure needs. That has to start now. Building new transmission, making sure that we have the grid that we need. That work has to begin now, but it's not a barrier to taking action on the Lower Snake, which we need to do now. So I just wanted to make sure that people understand that we can do both. We can plan for the future and build out those long-term resources while we are taking action on salmon restoration and energy replacement now.
Thank you for that, Nancy. And I think, you know, that's the way that we need to view it. And, you know, our messaging that goes, whether it's to state governors or to congressional leaders, state congressional leaders, or federal congressional leaders that, we're looking at making the changes that that need to happen now, and really what we can do. We definitely want to emerge on the other side of this, a stronger, better, smarter Pacific Northwest, and therefore, making America a stronger place too, and a better place, and the way that we do energy. I just think that the opportunities are here now with the funding that's out there. I know the studying has all been done. It's just time for action now, and I'm glad that we're here, pushing for that action, and in the different forums that I spoke of earlier, whether it's the Columbia River Treaty, whether it's the Columbia Basin Collaborative, whether it's the FMCS process, or any of the other forums that we're in, affiliated tribes of the Northwest Indians, our meetings with the NGOs. We're continuing to press and to push for the answers and solutions that are out there, and those like what Governor Inslee's doing with his budget, and making sure that there's a cost analysis established for the replacement of energy, transportation, and irrigation within the state of Washington, that will help move this needle forward, and help save the salmon, help save the orca, and all the other related things that are happening with the lack of salmon, or with the change in the climate crisis that we're in now. That we definitely need to do something, and continue to work, and continue to press. And I think by uniting voices, with like minds, that voice is heard, and it'll continue to be heard, and the action is already starting to take place now. So we just need to continue the momentum.
All right. Well, I bet we could go on and on, but unfortunately our time is coming to a close. So I just want to say, Katsiao, thank you for your attendance. For our first speaker series of 2023. I thank you, Nancy and Vice Chair Wheeler, for your time and your wisdom. So please stay tuned. Right now I have the slide up that has all of our social media platforms, a link to our website. You can follow us on here for more information. Next month, we will shift our focus slightly to transportation. So follow our social media. We're also going to have a petition to sign and share in the chat. So with that, I conclude. Kotsa Hektu, I'll see you later. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you, Nancy. Good seeing you again.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for being on.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Chetta.